Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Brudine, and welcome to another ALS Community Chat. I'm the Director of Donor Engagement with the chapter, and today I have Dale and Nancy with me, who both live in Medford, Oregon. Dale was diagnosed with ALS last year. That's correct, right, Dale, in 2020? And he's quickly become very involved, I think both Dale and Nancy, with our chapter services in Southern Oregon. Dale and Nancy are here today to discuss a bit about their lives living with ALS, as well as the support they've received through the chapter, and just to hopefully provide some advice and thoughts for other people living with this disease. So thank you so much, Dale and Nancy, for joining me. I'm going to pass it over to you two just to introduce yourselves, and if you don't mind telling me a little bit about your life and your background before ALS.
Okay. Well, thank you, Stephanie, for having us. It's a privilege to chat with you and your guests today. I'm sure many of those who see this have more experience with ALS than we do, but this is where we're at. We have, as you say, we live here in Southern Oregon. We've been married for 44 years. I met this one when she was 16 and I was 18. So we've been together for a long time. And indeed, that's one of the big challenges that we're facing, as we'll discuss in a minute. But my wife has been a medical front office worker down through the years. She homeschooled our children for many years, and I am a pastor. I've been a pastor for a long time, and was until pretty recently, I was a pretty fit guy. I used to run marathons. Now, using the word run is a bit of an exaggeration. Let's just say that I finished them, but I was pretty healthy up until I began to evince signs of what we would discover was ALS. We have 3 children and 5 grandkids. We just added a 5th grandchild very recently, and all of our kids live nearby here. We're very thankful for that.
Well, congratulations on the new grandson. And he continues on your name, right, Dale? Is it his middle name is also Dale?
That's right. Actually, it's in honor of my father. So now there's four generations of Dale, which I never really loved as a name, but I love to see it, my father's legacy go on.
Yeah, well, thank you. Can you tell me a little bit more about the journey to your ALS diagnosis, Dale? Some of the early symptoms and kind of how the journey between the beginning symptoms and then when you were officially diagnosed.
My father instilled a work ethic in me and all my siblings. I've always been a very hard worker, can-do kind of a person. He taught me never stand still, always keep moving. A couple of years ago, I noticed I was very active with families affected by disability, with my church, with our family, etc. But I noticed I was sure tired all the time. And I just expected it that I wasn't eating well or eating right. I began to grow weaker. I helped a friend build some fence. I love building fence. I find it recreational. But I was helping him and carrying those 4x4 posts or wrangling that post hole digger. It was really hard. Also, I was twitching everywhere. Finally, I went to the doctor, and surprisingly, I love my doctor, but surprisingly, when I reported that I was twitching all over all the time, his antenna did not go up for ALS. So it was over a year later when finally we began Googling symptoms. And that's what led us finally to a neuro, where I had that test where they can tell much more definitively if indeed it might be ALS. And he said something at that appointment that piqued my attention. He said, well, it's such a hard diagnosis that we want to be right. And indeed, as you friends, as you, Stephanie, know from dealing with pals and all of those listening know it is quite a challenging road to hoe, as we used to say.
Yeah, definitely. And that kind of segues nicely to the next question, Dale, as what have been some of the biggest challenges for you and Nancy while living with this disease?
Honey, do you want to talk about that first?
I think that it's just a real shift in our relationship. Usually we've both been really active and have worked as a team. I guess that's the best way to describe it, whether around the house or with people coming over, or we kind of knew our each individual jobs, and now we're kind of blending into one and what needs to be done for him especially.
And she's, bless her heart, my wife has done a very good job of becoming my caregiver. We went on an outing yesterday. It's about the first time really I've gone any distance from the house. We went up to one of the local lakes, and it was really fun to get out and enjoy some of the changing season. But I joke that traveling with me now is kind of like traveling with a 160-pound, nearly potty trained baby with COPD. It's really quite a challenge to go anywhere. But she has risen to the challenge very, very nicely. For me, there is all the physical issues, of course, chief among them breathing and eating, two of the favorite things I've enjoyed over the last 65 years. But you know what, Stephanie, honestly, my biggest challenge is the struggle with feeling useless. As I said, I've always been a can't do, make it happen kind of a guy. And now, of course, I just increasingly am not able to be that person. I have to rely on others. I have to rely on my wife. I have to rely on friends and family. At this moment, my brother-in-law is out in the backyard fixing something for me. It just drives me crazy that I can't be out there doing that myself or helping. And so that feeling of my loss of responsibility, my loss of ability, that goes to the heart of who I am. And from time to time, I'll be honest, I struggle with that. And I imagine that will be a bigger challenge as I am increasingly less able to get out of bed, less able to do even, I can still type. So I write emails and I post things and I can speak, but I'm rapidly losing my ability to speak. And after having been a public speaker for more than 40 years, I joke that Jesus has finally figured out how to shut me up for once. But that is my struggle, and I'm very grateful for my family, the support I've got from them in dealing with that sense of loss and uselessness.
Well, I think a lot of people living with ALS, Dale, I think would definitely share that sentiment and feel some relation to that feeling of that kind of loss. So I really appreciate you sharing that. You just spoke a little bit about how your family has helped you cope with that a little bit. Do you have any examples, Dale, of how they've helped you? I mean, I'm sure you're extremely grateful for your brother-in-law being there and helping. I mean, even though it's even though it's a sad thing, it's also something that's a blessing in a lot of ways to have that help.
Well, that leads us to, we've been very fortunate. The kids have been, for example, one of my sons was very concerned that we have some access to auxiliary power. So that in the event our electricity went out, I would still be able to use my BiPAP on which I'm depending whenever I recline. So there's been that. What else was I going to say? What?
The bed, the ALS Association has granted us money for towards a bed, which we realized pretty early on that he can't lay flat, that he needs to be elevated with the BiPAP. And so those things have been really useful, very helpful to us.
I mentioned the electricity, and the ALS Association helped us get a generator so that in the event of a loss of power, we would be able. The bed has been another thing. We're the beneficiaries of a great deal of support from our family, our church family. I've served as a chaplain to the police department here, and the cops have just been wonderful to us. On the recent Saturday, I had a whole bunch of cops here working in my yard, and it's kind of fun to tell cops what to do. But everyone's been so wonderful. But one of the best things is our access to what is her title? What's Peyton's title?
Care Services Coordinator.
Our Care Services Coordinator with the ALS Association. Her name is Peyton. She was a long-time acquaintance in our area, but then we discovered she was with ALS. And after I was diagnosed, of course, at first you're diagnosed, and I freaked out a little bit. I didn't know much about it. I didn't know what to do. You start reading things on the internet. Some of it's very helpful. Some of it's kind of wacky. It was so great to be able to make a call and immediately have an in-person appointment with a woman who had a bunch of answers to our questions, the willingness to get answers that she didn't already have, and access to resources that could help us. Access to equipment, for example. In the other room right now, we have a frame on which my speaking device, my Toby, the thing that I will eventually use to communicate when I can't speak any longer. The ALS Association is loaning us a frame on which that thing will sit, and that's huge because it's a very heavy device and would be hard to use without it. So Peyton's help, the ALS Association's help, has been invaluable. One of the questions that you posed to us, Stephanie, was, what would I say to people newly diagnosed with ALS or to their caregivers? And I don't know what your perspective would be, but I would say to folks, you've got to be willing to accept help. I think it's a combination of pride and the feeling of the importance of self-sufficiency, with which a lot of us have grown, and which normally are real virtues, which nonetheless can keep us from looking for and then accepting help. Just at lunch today, I was talking to a family member about a friend that she is helping. This person is struggling with MS, but this person is married to a spouse who wants to do everything himself. I understand you don't want to parade the people in your home all the time, but the problem is they have children, and the gal with MS, she's young, so they have a lot of life ahead of them. And how is he not going to burn out when he insists on providing all the care? So we have to be people who are willing to let others know. We think, oh, I don't want to burden everybody else with my problem. So we might not even tell people, hey, my husband's been diagnosed with ALS, or my wife has been diagnosed with ALS. Or we might be unwilling to ask for, hey, we need help with the yard, or we need help with transport, or we need just someone to sit with our pal, for an hour or two. But when we do that, we not only are putting more of a burden on ourselves and our caregivers, we're also robbing other people of what can be a blessing for them to give to us.
I think that was very poignantly said, Dale, because I do agree that it can also be a blessing for the person to give you that care and that love and that piece of their time. And I do think it's really great advice to say to accept some of that help. I've never been in your position, so I can't speak to it personally, but I do think that accepting of the help is a harder battle than a lot of people from the outside may think. But I think it'll end up creating so many better opportunities for both you, Dale, as well as Nancy, as your loved one and as your caregiver as well. Do you kind of share a similar sentiment, Nancy, about accepting help? And as a caregiver, do you find that can be difficult to accept help from others?
Definitely. It's just as hard, if not harder for me, because it's my space. Whereas he's gone out to work, I've been here. I had another job outside the home, but it's hard to let other people do stuff. I'd much rather help other people than them help me. And so it's humbling. But we both have had to realize that this is humbling for both of us in different ways. And I don't want to put everything on our kids for helping us. And so I'm looking at more things that, what can I give up? Letting people bring us meals every so often. And it's also just the support with texting friends, even things like that, where usually you're so busy that you can't keep up with friends. Now I'm really trying to make an effort with that.
Thank you, Nancy. Dale and Nancy, I don't know, do you all attend the support group in Southern Oregon?
We do. It's all been by Zoom since we started. And I'll tell you, it's, I'm a people person, so I just enjoy meeting and talking to people. And we goof around probably more than Peyton would, or I goof around probably more than Peyton would like. But also, as a result of the interacting with other pals, we've gotten some of our best tips. For example, in the meeting this week, I got some good input on the use of a machine that I've been given to help that I haven't been able to get help with, where someone who's already using it had some good tips. So it's been very helpful, both socially, but also just educationally participate in those meetings.
You also don't even know before you start the meeting. You think, well, what are we going to talk about? Is it really going to be helpful? But there's more to it. There's also the community of knowing there's other people out there. We're not alone. We're not isolated with this. And like you said, bringing up things that we didn't even know we'd need to be thinking about. So even proactive thinking.
Well, thank you both so much. And I appreciate the kind words about Peyton. I will definitely share this with her because I think that would make her day to hear the nice things you said, Dale. And also for our services, because of course we're here hoping to make a difference and hoping to make everyone's life easier and better. So it's so positive to hear that the chapter is able to have that impact, and hopefully will convince other people as well to lean in to support groups, to some of the services we provide in order to make things a little bit better, a little bit easier. Before we sign off, I'd love to know, there's always sometimes listeners who are not familiar with ALS, Dale, and I don't know, I think you had familiarity with ALS, Dale. I know that you knew a few people before, but for those who might not be familiar with ALS, what's a message you would like to share with anyone?
Wow.
Or is that too much of one that I threw on you, Dale?
Yeah. Let's see, I have to leave by Friday. As they say, ALS affects everyone differently, and it takes a different course with some people. We've all heard of ALS victims who pass away quite quickly after they've been diagnosed. And then you hear of people who live for a number of years, even many years after they're diagnosed. So it can mean so many different things for different people. I wanted to say, Stephanie, that, I'm a talker. I love talking. I've always been a talker. When I talk about this, I'm afraid that I can sound glib, like I'm minimizing what other people are going through. I'm doing real good because I have a long held, deep seated faith that tells me why I'm here and where I'm going. So I'm golden whether I live or die. But I'll be honest and say that if I were a younger man, I'd really be struggling with this. At 65, I feel like I've been way overblessed. But if I were 45, you read about people being diagnosed with ALS at very young ages, 35, 45, even 50. I think I certainly would be wrestling with this. And by speaking rapidly or speaking glibly or making jokes, I don't mean to minimize what anybody is going through. And I would just say that we're very fortunate to have the association and people like you looking out for us, helping us with everything from legislation to research to very practical resources. But I'd say it all starts like everything else. It's what's inside you that matters most. And so what I would say about ALS is the news that you're going to be dying sooner than you probably expected can really be jarring and send you into a what do you call it, tailspin. Or it can awaken you to the possibilities of not just life, but a life in the after you pass away. C.S. Lewis said that for a believer, death is not the end, but the sign of a new beginning. And so if we can be helpful to anybody listening in any way, a number of people knowing I have ALS, they've heard of somebody getting diagnosed and they've said, well, call this guy. And I've had the privilege of just sharing what little I've learned and gone through about my loss of strength. I'm losing everything, the ability to eat, the ability to use my plumbing. It's humiliating and embarrassing and frustrating and all those things. That's what ALS is, a debilitating disease. And that's why it's so important that we stick together, encourage each other, that you keep up your good work in encouraging people on the state or regional level. We really appreciate that. And without you, we'd almost be on our own. So we're grateful to you and for every one of the pals or caregivers who are listening.
Thank you so much, Dale and Nancy. And I do think your sense of humor, Dale, I view it as a very big positive. And I'm sure in support groups, you've noticed a lot of other people who use humor as a coping mechanism as well. And, it brightens my day to talk to you and to have a few laughs as well. So thank you so much, Dale and Nancy. This is recorded and is available on Facebook as well as YouTube. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And thank you, Dale and Nancy.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.